The radio cracked once, then again, then went dead in a way that felt wrong, like silence with weight, like quiet that leaned forward instead of pulling back. And the road stretched ahead under your headlights, as if it had no end, as if the night had decided to keep you for itself. The fog rolling low and thick like it knew where you were going before you did. The dashboard clock blinking 2:17 a.m., a time that didn't belong to sleep or safety or reason, a time that felt borrowed, stolen, misplaced, the kind of time where bad decisions feel normal and good instincts feel like paranoia, and you told yourself it was just another empty highway, just another late drive, just another night that would pass like all the others. But your hands stayed tight on the wheel anyway. Your shoulders never dropped. Your eyes kept flicking to the mirrors even though there was nothing there, nothing you could see, nothing you could explain. And that was the problem, because the CB radio was on, glowing red, alive, waiting. And when it hissed, it wasn't static, it wasn't interference, it was breath, slow and close and deliberate, like someone leaning into your space without touching you. And then the voice came through, low and calm and certain, a voice that didn't rush and didn't warn and didn't ask, a voice that knew something you didn't, saying only 3 words that landed heavier than any scream ever could. Don't turn around. And your heart didn't jump, it sank. Because fear didn't arrive suddenly, it unfolded, spreading through your chest and down your arms and into your fingers until the steering wheel felt too solid and too fragile at the same time. And your first thought wasn't why or who or how. It was, how did they know I would? Because every instinct you had was screaming to look, to check, to confirm, to prove the voice wrong, and every other instinct was begging you not to, telling you that some things don't chase you, they wait, that some horrors don't announce themselves, they invite you to notice. And the road kept going, straight and endless, mile markers slipping past like they were counting down to something you hadn't agreed to, the engine humming too steadily, the tires whispering against the asphalt like they were sharing a secret with the dark, and the CB radio stayed open, breathing softly, reminding you that whatever spoke was still there, still listening, still close enough to matter. And you wondered how long it had been watching, how long it had known you were alone, how long it had been waiting for the exact moment when curiosity would feel stronger than survival. And the mirrors stayed dark, reflecting only the thin white lines and the empty promise of distance. But emptiness has a way of lying, of pretending it's harmless until you realize it's just making room. And the voice came again, quieter now, closer somehow, as if distance had stopped applying, as if sound no longer needed space to travel, repeating the same words, slower this time, like a kindness, like advice, like a rule written too late. Don't turn around, and your neck muscles tightened, burning with the effort not to move, because the human mind hates unfinished pictures, hates unanswered questions, hates the idea that something could exist just outside the frame. And the longer you stared forward, the more you felt it behind you, not as a shape, not as a sound, but as a tension, focused and patient and undeniably real. And you understood then that this wasn't about seeing, it was about choice, about whether you trusted the warning or needed proof, about whether fear would protect you or betray you. And the night seemed to lean closer, the fog thickening, the road narrowing, the world reducing itself to the inside of your car and the space just behind your head, and every second stretched longer than the last, daring you, tempting you, asking the same question without words. What would you risk just to know? And somewhere deep inside you realized the most terrifying part wasn't the voice or the warning or the thing you refused to look at. It was the feeling that whatever was behind you already knew exactly what you were going to do. The engine kept its steady hum like nothing in the universe had changed, like physics had signed a contract to ignore fear, and the road continued to unspool beneath the headlights in one long, unbroken sentence, white lines sliding past with mechanical obedience. But inside the car, time had begun to stretch and warp, seconds swelling into heavy shapes you had to push through, because the words from the CB radio didn't fade the way sound was supposed to. They stayed, echoing without echo, lodged somewhere behind your eyes. Don't turn around, not shouted, not whispered, just stated, as if the voice had read the future and found only one instruction worth saving, and your hands clenched harder on the wheel, knuckles whitening, palms damp, heart thudding with a rhythm that felt too loud for the closed space of the car. And you told yourself it had to be a prank, had to be some bored trucker messing with late-night drivers, had to be anything that still belonged to the world you understood. But the fear didn't listen to logic. It listened to patterns, and something about the timing, the calm, the certainty told your instincts this was not a joke and not an accident and not meant for anyone else, because the voice hadn't asked if anyone was out there. It hadn't waited for a reply. It had spoken as if it knew you were already listening, as if it had been listening first. And the mirrors caught your attention again, pulling at your eyes like magnets, the rear view reflecting only darkness and the faint glow of your own face, tense and pale and unfamiliar, a version of you that already looked like someone who had made a mistake. And you forced your gaze back to the road, jaw clenched, teeth pressed together, because curiosity is a predator that disguises itself as reason. And every argument your mind produced for looking back sounded reasonable until you measured it against the cost of being wrong. And the cost felt infinite, and the fog thickened without warning, swallowing distance, turning the world into a narrow corridor of light and shadow, and the sense of isolation deepened, not just alone on the road, but alone in reality. Like you had slipped sideways into a quieter version of the night where rules were optional and witnesses didn't exist. And the CB radio crackled again, softer this time, like it was adjusting its distance, learning how close it needed to be. And you held your breath without realizing it, lungs burning, waiting for the sound to resolve into either nonsense or confirmation. And when the voice returned, it didn't repeat the warning. It elaborated, and that was worse, because it said your name, not shouted, not questioned, but spoken with the casual familiarity of someone checking the time, and your stomach dropped, because names are anchors, and hearing yours spoken by something you couldn't place or see felt like being grabbed by the spine, and the road dipped slightly, headlights TI, enal ting, shadows shifting, and for a split second you thought you saw movement at the edge of the beam, not crossing the road, not stepping into view, just keeping pace, parallel, patient. And you blinked hard, eyes watering, telling yourself fatigue does that, darkness does that, fear does that, but the feeling didn't leave. It grew, a pressure between your shoulders, a certainty that the space behind your seat was occupied by more than air. And the voice continued, explaining without explaining, saying things that sounded like warnings but felt like rehearsed lines, like something repeating instructions it had given before, saying that people always look, that people always think they're different, that people always believe the rule doesn't apply to them. And your pulse pounded in your ears so loudly it nearly drowned out the words, and you wondered how many others had heard this same voice on this same road at this same hour, wondering if the emptiness you'd noticed earlier wasn't emptiness at all, but the absence left behind by those who didn't keep driving. And the thought made your foot press down harder on the accelerator, the speedometer creeping upward, engine responding obediently, But the sense of motion didn't change. The road didn't seem to come any closer to an end, mile markers appearing and disappearing with mocking regularity, as if distance itself had decided to loop. And the fog grew so dense it felt solid, like you could reach out and tear it, and the headlights began to feel inadequate, fragile, two small eyes trying to hold back an ocean of dark. And the voice laughed softly, not amused, not cruel, just acknowledging, like a teacher watching a student realize the exam is harder than expected. And it said that speed wouldn't help, that stopping wouldn't help, that silence wouldn't help, because this wasn't about escape, it was about attention. And that word stuck, attention, because you could feel it. The weight of being observed without direction, without blinking, without emotion, like standing under a microscope you never agreed to step beneath. And your mind raced for options, for rules, for rituals, for anything that might apply. Checking mirrors again without turning your head, using peripheral vision like it might save you. But the mirrors showed nothing new, just darkness behaving exactly the way darkness was supposed to behave, which somehow made it worse. And the voice seemed to sense your frustration, your doubt, your need for proof, and it offered it, saying that you could look if you wanted, that it wouldn't stop you, that it never did, that the warning wasn't a command, it was a courtesy. And your throat tightened, because that meant whatever happened next was your responsibility. And the night pressed in closer, the car feeling smaller, the ceiling lower, the back seat farther away and yet too near. And your thoughts began to fragment, looping around the same questions. How did it get there? When did it start? Why you? And none of them mattered, because the only question that mattered was whether you could live with not knowing. And humans are terrible at that, terrible at leaving doors closed, terrible at trusting unseen dangers. And the voice went quiet, not cutting out, just waiting, the way a line stays open after someone stops talking. And that silence was heavier than sound, because it meant the next move was yours. And the road curved slightly, a gentle bend that forced the headlights to shift, shadows sliding across the trees lining the highway. And for a heartbeat the darkness seemed to lean forward, eager, and your neck muscles screamed. Your shoulders tensed, your body betraying you with micro movements, tiny adjustments that edged you closer to turning. And you thought about all the Ms. curiosity had paid off, all the mysteries solved, all the fears that turned out to be nothing. And you thought about the times it hadn't, the stories that ended abruptly, the warnings ignored, the last moments no one could explain. And the balance tipped back and forth with every breath, and the voice returned one last time. Not through the CB now, but inside your head, or so it felt, saying that whatever you imagined was wrong, that reality was always worse and simpler at the same time, that the human brain filled gaps with monsters because it couldn't handle the truth, and that if you turned around you wouldn't see a creature or a face or a shadow. You would see yourself. And that sentence shattered something, because it made no sense and too much sense at once. And your reflection in the rear view seemed to shift, eyes looking a fraction too focused, smile threatening at the corners of your mouth where no smile belonged. And panic surged, cold and sharp, flooding your limbs. And you realized then that the warning wasn't about what was behind you, it was about what would happen if you acknowledged it, if you completed the circuit, if you allowed the loop to close. And the car hit a bump, jolting you, snapping your attention forward again, heart racing, breath ragged, and you laughed, a short broken sound, because fear sometimes comes out sideways. And you told yourself you were done, you weren't going to play along. You weren't going to turn around. You were going to keep driving until the road ended, or the sun came up, or reality reasserted itself. And for a moment it worked, the fog thinning just slightly, the sense of pressure easing, the radio staying quiet, and hope crept in, dangerous and bright. convincing you that endurance was enough, that rules respected persistence, that nightmares had limits. And then the dashboard lights flickered, just once, and the engine stuttered, a hiccup that sent your stomach lurching, and the car slowed despite your foot on the gas, speed bleeding away, and dread replaced hope instantly, because control is only comforting when it's real. And the voice sighed, almost regretful, saying that everyone eventually stops, that machines get tired too, that the road always collects its due. And the car rolled to a halt in the middle of the lane, engine dying with a final shudder, headlights still on, illuminating fog and nothing else, and the silence that followed was absolute, pressing against your ears until they rang, and you sat frozen, hands still on the wheel, mind screaming, body locked, because now the option had been removed. And when choice disappears, fear becomes pure, undiluted, and you felt it then, unmistakably, a shift in weight behind you, the slightest depression in the seat, a presence settling in like it had always belonged there. And the voice was no longer necessary because the rule had already done its work, because you hadn't turned around, and that meant you were still you, still separate, still unacknowledged. And the realization dawned slowly, horribly, that the warning hadn't been to protect you from seeing it. It had been to protect it from being seen. Because once you turned, once you made eye contact, once you recognized what shared your space, the roles would reverse, and you would no longer be the one driving, and the fog outside the windshield began to thin, the road ahead becoming visible again, stretching forward as if nothing had happened, as if inviting you to continue. And the engine turned over on its own, rumbling back to life, obedient, ready, and your hands tightened on the wheel, because now you understood the bargain, because now you knew that as long as you never turned around, you could keep going, you could keep pretending, you could keep the thing bay. You content and unseen, and the headlights cut through the night once more, and the car rolled forward, carrying two of you down an endless road, one watching the way ahead, and one smiling patiently in the dark, waiting for the moment you finally needed to know. The road accepted you again without ceremony, asphalt humming beneath the tires as if nothing had been interrupted, as if engines didn't stall and rules didn't whisper themselves into existence. And you drove because stopping felt worse, because motion at least pretended there was progress, and the fog peeled back slowly, reluctantly, revealing trees that stood too straight and too still, silhouettes frozen like witnesses who had already given their statements and had nothing left to add. And the radio stayed quiet now, obediently silent, which should have felt like relief, but instead felt like surveillance perfected, because whatever needed to be said had already been said, and the absence of sound meant the absence of negotiation. And your thoughts tried to settle into routines, counting breaths, watching speed, keeping eyes forward, anything to avoid thinking about the weight behind you that shifted subtly with every curve, every acceleration, every minor correction of the wheel, a presence that obeyed physics just enough to be undeniable. And you wondered how long it had been since you were truly alone, whether solitude was something that ended abruptly or faded so slowly no one noticed the exact second it vanished. And the night stretched on, miles blurring together, signs flashing past too quickly to read, destinations advertised that felt fictional now, places that belonged to other lives where radios only carried music and warnings came printed on paper. And you told yourself stories to stay grounded, replaying memories, anchoring yourself to past mornings and familiar faces, but even those felt company, and promised, like memories viewed through glass, intact but distant. And occasionally you caught yourself wondering what it saw when it looked at you, whether it recognized you as a person or as a function, a vehicle, a means of transport for something that didn't walk roads the way humans did. And the idea made your skin crawl because it suggested intention, and intention suggested patience, and patience suggested time measured differently than yours, and the mirrors remained unchanged, stubbornly faithful to darkness, reflecting nothing that could confirm or deny your fears, and that constancy became its own form of cruelty, because proof would have been easier. Proof would have allowed panic to burn out, but uncertainty fed itself, recycling dread into new shapes, and your body began to ache from tension held too long. Shoulders knotted, jaw sore, fingers numb where they gripped the wheel, and still you didn't turn, because now turning felt less like curiosity and more like surrender, and surrender felt permanent, and the road dipped into a shallow valley, temperature dropping, breath fogging the windshield for a moment before the defroster cleared it. And in that brief blur you imagined the reflection behind you changing, imagined eyes opening where darkness had been, imagined a smile stretching wider than anatomy allowed, and you shook your head hard, grounding yourself in the tactile reality of vinyl seats and plastic panels, reminding yourself that fear manufactures images the way lungs manufacture breath, automatically, relentlessly, and hours, or something like hours, passed, time losing its edges, and fatigue crept in, heavy and seductive. Because exhaustion doesn't care about danger, it only cares about rest, and your eyelids grew heavy, blinking longer each time, and panic flared at that too, because sleep felt like another kind of turning around, another way of losing vigilance, and you slapped your cheek, rolled down the window despite the cold, letting sharp air cut through the cabin, and the night rushed in, carrying the smell of damp earth and something else beneath it, something metallic and old, and you realized then that the outside world wasn't neutral anymore, that it felt aligned, complicit, as if the road and the fog and the trees were all part of the same system that had produced the warning. And the realization isolated you further, because systems don't respond to pleas, and the CB radio clicked suddenly, a soft mechanical sound, not a voice, just confirmation that it was still connected, still functional, still part of the loop, and you froze, breath caught, waiting for words that didn't come, and after a long moment you understood the message anyway. That silence was the reward for obedience, that as long as you followed the rule, the system would remain stable, and stability, however terrifying, was preferable to escalation. And you drove on, watching the sky lighten almost imperceptibly at the edges, a false dawn perhaps, or just the imagination of someone desperate for markers, and hope stirred cautiously, because daylight promised witnesses, promised context, promised the return of ordinary explanations, and you clung to that idea like a talisman, counting down miles, telling yourself that whatever this was couldn't survive scrutiny, couldn't exist under the honest light of morning, and the thought steadied you, allowed your breathing to slow, your grip to loosen slightly, and for a while, an untrustworthy while, you almost forgot about the presence behind you, not because it was gone, but because fear had dulled into background noise, a constant hum rather than a scream, and that was when it moved more noticeably, shifting weight, adjusting posture, like someone settling in for a long ride, and your stoma twisted, because familiarity breeds carelessness, and carelessness breeds mistakes, and the sky continued to pale, fog thinning into ragged strands, and shapes emerged more clearly, guardrails, road signs, exits leading to towns with names you recognized, names that carried histories and populations and rules, and you took the first exit without hesitation, desperate for change, desperate to break the monotony of the highway, and the road curved sharply, slowing you, forcing focus, and streetlights appeared, casting pools of yellow light that felt like sanctuaries, and buildings followed. Gas stations and closed diners and silent houses, and relief surged so strongly it almost hurt, because civilization felt like armor, and you drove through empty streets, tires echoing too loudly in the quiet, and nothing happened. No voice, no movement, no escalation, and you began to believe, cautiously, that whatever followed rules respected boundaries, that towns were safe zones, that density diluted danger, and you parked under a streetlight without fully deciding to. Engine idling, heart pounding, and for the first time you considered getting out of the car, stepping into open air, testing the limits of the rule, because the warning had been specific. Don't turn around, not don't stop, not don't exit, and technicalities felt tempting, and you sat there wrestling with the idea, logic and fear colliding, and finally you killed the engine, the sudden silence ringing in your ears, and you waited, counting to 10, then 20, then 30, and nothing happened, and courage sparked, reckless and bright, and you reached for the door handle, fingers trembling, and paused, because the presence shifted again, a subtle lean forward this time, and understanding slammed into you that the rule wasn't limited to sight, that acknowledgement took many forms, that turning around wasn't just a physical action but a conceptual one, a decision to engage, to prioritize what was behind over what was ahead, and stepping out of the car would do exactly that, would place you in its world rather than keeping it in yours, and you withdrew your hands slowly, pulse racing, and laughed softly at yourself, because the thing behind you didn't need chains or threats, it only needed options, and you put the car back in drive, leaving the town behind without looking at it too closely, because attachment felt dangerous now too, and the highway accepted you again, and dawn finally broke in earnest, sunlight spilling over the horizon, washing the world in pale gold, and for a moment the fear receded, overwhelmed by the sheer normalcy of daylight. Birds lifting from trees, dew glinting on grass, the world resuming its performance, and you almost believed the nightmare had been nocturnal, bound to darkness, and the optimism carried you for miles, enough that you allowed yourself to breathe deeply, to stretch your neck, to blink away grit from your eyes, and then, in the clear light of morning, you noticed the reflection, not in the mirror but in the windshield, a second outline overlapping your own, faint but distinct, sitting where no one should have been, smiling with your mouth, watching with your eyes, and the terror returned, sharper for having been delayed, because daylight hadn't banished it. It had revealed the permanence of the arrangement, and you understood then that this wasn't a chase or a haunting or a test you could pass. It was a coexistence, a long-term condition, a passenger that didn't need food or sleep or conversation, only compliance, and the road stretched on, leading to places you would visit and leave and never fully inhabit again, because part of you would always be oriented, forward, guarding against the single forbidden motion, and part of you would all W. Please be aware of the presence behind, patient and unblinking, and as the miles accumulated, and the day aged and the sun climbed higher, you settled into the grim rhythm of it, learning how to live without closure, how to function without turning, how to accept that some warnings aren't meant to be escaped, only obeyed. And the most frightening truth settled quietly into your bones, heavier than any scream, heavier than any shadow, that the voice on the CB radio hadn't saved you from something terrible. It had initiated you into something permanent. And as long as you kept driving, kept looking ahead, kept pretending the road was the point, the thing behind you would remain exactly where it was, waiting patiently for the day you finally needed to know what it already knew about you. The miles accumulated in a way that felt less like travel and more like erosion, each stretch of road wearing down a little more of who you had been before the warning, before the voice, before the rules settled into your life like an uninvited law of nature. And you learned quickly that fear doesn't stay sharp forever. It dulls, it spreads, it becomes background weather, always present, rarely acknowledged, shaping decisions quietly, and you began to live inside that shape. Planning routes that favored straight lines, avoiding tight turns and sudden stops, choosing highways over city streets, motion over pause, because stillness invited thought, and thought invited mistakes, and the presence behind you became less a shock and more a constant pressure, like gravity, invisible but undeniable, and you stopped wondering what it looked like, because imagination had proven dangerous, because images wanted completion, and completion meant turning, even if only in the mind, and you couldn't afford that, so you focused instead on the mechanics of survival, on fuel gauges and rest areas passed but never entered, on music played softly to keep your thoughts from echoing too loudly, on podcasts and voices that talked about ordinary things, banal things, the comforting trivia of a world that didn't know what rode with you, and sometimes you caught yourself laughing at jokes, reacting like a normal person, and the normalcy felt obscene, like wearing clean clothes at a funeral, and guilt crept in too, guilt without a clear source, because some part of you suspected that this was not a private arrangement, that the road had made these bargains before, that others had driven these same stretches with the same rule burning behind their eyes, and you wondered what had become of them, whether they were still driving somewhere out there, maintaining distance from mirrors and memory, or whether they had slipped just once in a moment of exhaustion or desperation and paid whatever price the rule extracted, and the thought hardened your resolve, because if this was endurance, then endurance was something you could learn. And days passed, measured not by sleep but by light cycles, because sleep came in fragments now, brief micro-rests at long straightaways, eyes heavy but never fully closed, mind trained to snap awake at the slightest change in sound or balance, and your body adapted reluctantly, hunger dulling, thirst managed mechanically, fatigue becoming a constant ache rather than a crisis, and the world outside the windshield kept changing, climates shifting, landscapes rolling from forest to plains to desert, and still the presence remained, adjusting effortlessly, unaffected by heat or cold, day or night. And that told you something important, that whatever it wasn't bound to environment, that it didn't experience the world the way you did, and the asymmetry of that relationship frightened you more than any imagined face ever could, because it meant the rule wasn't mutual, it was imposed, and you were the only one who had something to lose by breaking it. And sometimes, in quieter moments, you felt anger rise, hot and reckless, anger at the unfairness of it, at the lack of explanation, at the way your life had narrowed to a single forbidden motion, and the anger tempted you, whispering that you deserved answers, that knowledge was a right, not a risk, and you had to fight that voice too, because it sounded too much like your own, and anger made promises fear never could, promising relief, promising closure, promising an end, and you learned to recognize that temptation as just another version of the same trap, another way of turning around without moving your neck, and so you learned discipline, a grim, relentless discipline, monitoring not just your body but your thoughts, redirecting them whenever they drifted too close to the forbidden question. And this mental vigilance exhausted you more than the driving ever could, because there was no rest from yourself, and yet life, stubborn and indifferent, continued to intrude. Gas stations where clerks asked polite questions you answered automatically, motel clerks who handed over keys you never used, strangers who commented on your tired eyes, your distant focus, your refusal to sit or linger, and you became skilled at excuses, at stories that explained movement without destination, because destinations implied arrival, and arrival implied stopping, and stopping implied choices you couldn't afford to make. And occasionally someone would look at you a second too long, their gaze lingering not on your face but slightly behind it, and panic would flare, sharp and immediate, because you didn't know if they sensed something, if whatever rode with you cast a shadow others could feel, and you would leave quickly in those moments, heart racing, convinced you'd narrowly avoided exposure. And the rule expanded subtly over time, no longer just about not turning around, but about minimizing all forms of acknowledgement, reflections in windows avoided, photographs refused, conversations deflected, because recognition felt dangerous now, because the presence thrived on awareness, and you denied it that nourishment as best you could. And still, in rare moments of weakness, you wondered if it noticed your efforts, if it appreciated the care you took, or if appreciation was a human concept it had no use for. And the CB radio remained in the car like a relic, silent but potent, and you never turned it off because turning it off felt like a challenge, like signaling independence, and independence felt foolish. And sometimes at night, when the road was straight and empty and your mind drifted despite your best efforts, you felt a subtle warmth behind you, not comforting, not threatening, just present. And you wondered if that was its version of patience, its way of reminding you that it was still there, that the agreement was ongoing, and months blurred together, seasons changed, your appearance shifted, hair growing longer, beard thickening, eyes hardening, and you barely recognized yourself in the rare moments you caught your reflection accidentally, always from the front, always careful, and the person you saw looked like someone who had learned a difficult skill, someone who had survived something without understanding it. And that person frightened you too, because survival changes people in ways explanations never can. And you began to think about what would happen if the road ended, if there truly was nowhere left to drive, and the thought gnawed at you, because infinite motion isn't possible, because maps have edges even when roads don't. And you started to notice signs that suggested limits, oceans approaching, borders closing, ferries requiring stops, and you avoided them all, rerouting constantly, trapped in a continental loop, and the realization that your world had shrunk to what could be driven without interruption was sobering, because it meant the rule wasn't temporary, it was a lifestyle. And despair crept in then, slow and heavy, because endurance without hope is just prolonged fear. And you wondered if this was all there was now, if your life had been reduced to maintenance, to compliance, to an endless forward gaze, and the thought hollowed you out, because humans are built for narratives, for beginnings and middles and ends. And this was a story that refused to progress, looping instead. And one night, under a sky heavy with stars, the presence shifted again, closer than it ever had been. And for the first time you felt something like emotion from it, not hunger or threat, but anticipation. And dread flooded you, because anticipation suggested a change, and change was dangerous. And the CB radio clicked on its own, startling you so badly you nearly swerved, and the voice returned at last, unchanged by time, calm as ever, and it didn't repeat the warning. It acknowledged your endurance, your obedience, your understanding of the rule, and that acknowledgement terrified you more than the original message ever had, because it meant you had been evaluated, measured, judged, and found sufficient. And the voice said that the road was long, but not endless, that eventually everyone arrives at a place where forward and backward lose their meaning, and that when that moment came, the rule would no longer protect you, and your chest tightened, breath shallow, because the implication was clear that this arrangement had an expiration date, that compliance delayed but did not eliminate an outcome. And the voice fell silent again, leaving you alone with that knowledge, and the road stretched on, indifferent, carrying you toward a future you could not look back from. And you drove, because driving was all you had left, Because as long as you kept your eyes forward and your neck still and your thoughts disciplined, the presence behind you would remain just that, behind you, unseen, unacknowledged, waiting for the moment when the road, or you, finally ran out. The warning aged inside you like a second spine, something you carried without seeing but felt in every movement, every decision, every hesitation, and the road became less a place and more a function, a mechanism designed to keep you oriented forward, because forward was safety now, forward was obedience, forward was survival. And you learned that the body adapts faster than the mind, that muscles learn routines even when thoughts rebel, and your hands knew the wheel the way a pianist knows keys, automatically correcting, maintaining speed, keeping the vehicle steady, while your mind drifted into controlled emptiness. Because emptiness was safer than curiosity, and the presence behind you became a constant calibration point, not loud, not aggressive, just there, like a shadow that didn't depend on light. And the strange thing was that after enough miles, fear transformed into something quieter and more corrosive, a low-level dread that no longer spiked but never left, a background radiation that altered everything slowly, invisibly, and you noticed how the world began to feel staged, as if every town, every billboard, every smiling stranger existed only to test whether you would stop, whether you would settle, whether you would risk stillness, and you stopped trusting coincidence entirely, because coincidence assumes neutrality, and neutrality no longer felt real, and sometimes you wondered if the road itself had been curated for you, if the exits appeared where they did because you were meant to pass them, not take them, and the idea, that your movement might be anticipated, unsettled you more than the presence ever had, because anticipation implied design, and design implied purpose, and you did not want to know what purpose required a human being to keep driving forever. And the seasons cycled again, snow giving way to thaw, heat rising and falling, your car bearing the marks of long use, paint dulled, tires replaced, interior worn smooth by repetition, and you handled these maintenance rituals efficiently, without attachment, because attachment invited permanence, and permanence invited questions, and questions circled back to the one you could not ask, and your sense of self began to blur, not because you forgot who you were, but because who you were no longer seemed relevant. Names mattered less than motion, history mattered less than direction, and you became someone who existed only in the present tense. Always now, always next mile, always forward. And there was a strange relief in that, a brutal simplicity that stripped life down to essentials: breathe, drive, don't turn. And yet beneath that simplicity a pressure built, because humans are not meant to live without reflection, without looking back metaphorically if not physically, and the longer you denied that instinct, the more distorted it became, surfacing in dreams you barely allowed yourself to have, dreams where mirrors multiplied endlessly, dreams where roads looped back on themselves no matter how fast you drove, dreams where you felt a hand on your shoulder and woke before you could react, heart hammering, sweat cold, and you began to fear sleep almost as much as stopping, because sleep loosened discipline, and discipline was all that kept the rule intact. And sometimes you caught yourself speaking out loud, narrating your actions, anchoring yourself in sound, because silence felt like an invitation, and your voice sounded differ. And now, flatter, more cautious, like someone who had learned that words carried weight even when no one answered, and the world responded to you differently too, or perhaps you noticed it more, the way animals watched your car pass without fear, the way other drivers lingered behind you and then dropped back, the way reflections in storefront glass seemed to lag a fraction of a second too long, and you stopped looking altogether, eyes fixed forward, because patterns were dangerous, And then one day, without warning, the road changed in a way you couldn't rationalize. Not dramatically, not with a sudden cliff or barricade, but subtly. The way a familiar room feels wrong when one piece of furniture has been moved, and you couldn't immediately identify what was different, only that something fundamental had shifted, and dread crept in slowly as you realized the lines on the road were fading, not worn but unfinished, as if they had never been fully painted, as if the concept of direction itself was weakening, and the sky above took on a flat, colorless quality, not cloudy, not clear, just neutral, like a background waiting for content, and your chest tightened, because neutrality had always preceded escalation, and the presence behind you reacted too, shifting in a way that felt alert, attentive, and for the first time you sensed not patience but interest, and the CB radio, silent for so long it had become furniture, clicked softly, not enough to speak, just enough to remind you it could, and panic flared, sharp and immediate, because you understood that this stretch of road was different, that it did not belong to the world you had been driving through, that the rules might be changing, and you scanned the horizon desperately, searching for signs, landmarks, anything familiar, but the landscape had simplified, trees thinning into suggestions, buildings absent, the world reducing itself to essentials the way your life had, and a terrible thought surfaced, that perhaps this was the place the voice had mentioned, the place where forward and backward lost meaning, and the idea terrified you because it implied an end to the bargain, an expiration of the rule that had kept you functional, and the presence leaned closer, not threatening, not aggressive, but intimate, like something preparing to be acknowledged, and your breath came shallow, your grip tightened, muscles screaming with the effort not to move your head, because instinct was warring with habit, and habit had kept you alive, and the road ahead narrowed further, not physically but conceptually, like a sentence reaching its final word, and you felt the weight of choice returning, heavy and unavoidable, because infinite deferral was no longer possible. And the voice returned at last, not through the radio, not inside your head, but everywhere at once, woven into the hum of the tires, the rush of air, the rhythm of your heartbeat. And it didn't command, it didn't warn, it explained, telling you that the rule had never been about punishment or protection, that it was a test of orientation, of whether you defined yourself by what you pursued or what you avoided, and that most people failed early, turning around at the first whisper, but some endured, some learned to live in motion, some learned discipline, and those were the ones who reached this place, and your mouth went dry, because being exceptional in this context felt like a curse. And the voice said that what waited behind you was not a monster, not a reflection, not an invader, but a record, an accumulation of every moment you had refused to face, every memory you had deferred, every version of yourself you had left behind in the name of survival. And it told you that as long as you drove, those things followed, compressed in. Oh, a single presence, gaining density, gaining coherence, and the rule existed to keep that mass from collapsing into you prematurely, and understanding hit like a physical blow, because you realized then that the presence was not external, not separate, but not fully you either, a shadow cast by endurance itself, and the road ahead began to dissolve, not vanishing but becoming transparent, as if distance no longer mattered, and you felt a profound exhaustion settle over you, deeper than fatigue, deeper than fear, the exhaustion of someone who had been running from themselves without realizing it, and the temptation to turn around surged with new intensity, not driven by curiosity now, but by longing, by the desire for integration, for rest, for an end to division, and tears blurred your vision, because the choice was cruel in its symmetry, continue forward and remain functional but fragmented, or turn around and face everything at once, with no guarantee of survival, and the presence behind you waited, no longer impatient, no longer hidden, simply ready, and the world held its breath with you, the road suspended in a state of becoming, and you understood that this was the true meaning of the warning, not "don't turn around" as an absolute, but "don't turn around until you are prepared to stop running." And your hands trembled on the wheel, heart pounding, because for the first time since the voice had spoken, the decision was no longer about fear. It was about who you were willing to become. And the night, the road, the presence, all waited in perfect stillness, because whatever happened next would finally, irrevocably, define the direction of your life. The stillness did not break all at once. It thinned, stretched, elongated, like a breath held far past comfort. And you remained frozen in that suspended moment where choice had weight but not motion, where awareness per se. In from every side, and yet nothing happened, and you realized that the road had stopped behaving like a road, no longer a surface that carried you somewhere else, but a place in itself. An arena where forward motion existed only because you believed in it, and belief suddenly felt fragile, because belief requires a future, and the future had narrowed to a single decision that did not care about distance or speed or time. And your hands trembled not from fear now, but from recognition, because recognition is heavier, because it forces alignment, and alignment demands change, and the presence behind you did not rush you, did not threaten, did not push. It simply existed with a density that suggested readiness, like something fully formed at last, and you felt its attention not as pressure but as gravity, pulling inward rather than backward, and that distinction mattered, because gravity does not chase, it waits, and the road ahead flickered subtly, not visually but conceptually, like a thought losing coherence, and you understood that forward motion had always been a coping mechanism, a way to avoid collapse by deferral, by stretching moments thin enough that nothing ever had to conclude. And you laughed softly then, a sound scraped from somewhere deep, because the absurdity of it struck you, that you had driven across seasons and states and versions of yourself, only to arrive at a place that had been inside you all along, compressed, avoided, carried, and the laughter broke into something like a sob, because endurance without processing leaves residues, and you had carried those residues mile after mile, letting them condense behind you into something solid enough to feel, and the voice, no longer distinct but woven into everything, told you that this was why turning around too early destroyed people, because they had not yet built the structure to contain what followed. Them, because fragments overwhelm when faced all at once, and you had survived not because you were braver, but because you were disciplined, because you learned how to delay without denying, how to move without fleeing completely, and that discipline had given shape to the thing behind you, had allowed it to grow into something coherent rather than chaotic. And coherence, the voice said, was the difference between annihilation and integration, and the road ahead faded further, not disappearing but losing authority, like a suggestion you no longer needed to obey, and you felt the car slow without braking, momentum draining as if the concept of speed had been gently revoked, and panic flared briefly out of habit, then receded, because habit no longer fit the situation, and you became acutely aware of your body again, of the ache in your shoulders, the stiffness in your neck, the dryness of your eyes, sensations you had muted for so long they felt foreign, and that awareness felt like returning to a house you had abandoned but never sold, familiar and unsettling, and the presence behind you felt closer still, not spatially but existentially, like a thought rising from subconscious to conscious awareness, and you realized that you had already turned in every way that mattered except physically, that you had examined the rule, questioned it, understood it, accepted its limits, and what remained was not fear but grief. Grief for the years spent running, for the relationships thinned by motion, for the self that had been reduced to a function. And grief is heavy, but it is also honest, and honesty grounded you in a way fear never had, and the road dissolved completely then, not into darkness but into irrelevance, like scenery dropped from a stage when the play changes acts, and you were no longer driving so much as existing in a space defined by readiness, and the presence behind you shifted one last time, settling, no longer looming, no longer hidden, simply present, and you understood that whatever it was now matched you in weight, in complexity, in readiness, because it was made of you, shaped by your endurance, tempered by your restraint. And the voice spoke again, quieter than ever, saying that turning around was not an act of looking but an act of acceptance, that sight was merely symbolic, and that when you were ready you would not need mirrors or neck muscles or courage, because readiness would make the motion inevitable, natural, like breathing out after a long-held breath. And you closed your eyes then, not to escape but to focus, because focus had become your greatest skill, and you felt the presence align with you, not behind, not ahead, but adjacent, overlapping, like two transparencies sliding into register, and memory flooded in, not violently but densely. Images and moments layered rather than sequential, mistakes and triumphs existing side by side, no longer competing for attention. And the sensation was overwhelming but not destructive, because coherence held it together, because you had built the capacity to hold it. And somewhere in that convergence you felt the rule dissolve, not broken but completed, like scaffolding removed after a building stands on its own, and you opened your eyes to a world that had depth again, not just forward distance but dimensionality. And you realized you were no longer in the car, no longer on the road, no longer constrained by motion, and the concept of turning around felt quaint, unnecessary, because there was no longer a behind or ahead, only presence, only awareness, only the quiet understanding that the warning had never been about danger on the road, but about timing, about learning when not to look and when to finally stop running. And the last thing you felt before everything settled into a new, unfamiliar stillness was relief, deep and unguarded, because at last you were no longer afraid of what followed you, because it had finally become part of who you were.